Hello and welcome to episode 9 of the Henka Boys. I'm James, this is Sean.
Hello.
Today's topic, sex, but more specifically, contraceptives. The history of, etc. Sean, what are you drinking?
Well, I'm drinking some Madeira today.
Oh,
Never tried it before, and I'm a big fan of port and sherry, so I thought, let's try some Madeira for a change.
You've tickled my fancies.
First thoughts, not that keen.
How old is it?
I think that says 2015.
2050. Okay, that's not too bad. Yeah, I mean they're very, very sweet. They're sort of like sultana-y white.
Yeah, it says served with sticky toffee pudding, which sounds fantastic. I'd say it reminds me of tawny port.
Sure, but it's stickier, right? I mean, another thing you can do is like pour it on vanilla ice cream. People like doing.
Yeah, not awful. Don't mind it. I'll give it a. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10.
Wow! And how much was it?
13 something, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. What are you drinking?
I'm drinking a bottle of wine. It's Saint Michel Vineyards Cabernet Sauvignon. It's from Columbia Valley in Washington State in the US.
Okay.
It's very good. 2016 vintage. It's got that nice vanilla-y sort of hint to it. I really like it. It's about £14. I think I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Actually,
oh, that's pretty high. That's pretty high. Isn't it?
I think that might be the highest rating I've given a wine. Actually,
okay.
Yeah, it's very good.
Is Washington a big wine producer? I've never heard of Washington wine before.
It's becoming bigger by the day, sure.
Okay.
It wasn't particularly big, maybe even a few years ago, but we're seeing more and more come in now, and it's
excellent.
It's good.
And
right.
So, how drunk am I? That's the next question, isn't it? And considering I've only had a couple of sips, I don't want to give it a 0, so I'm gonna have to say 1.
What? We're not going to dip into fractionals then.
No, that's silly.
0.8 or something. No. Yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to give myself probably a 4.2.
Oh, you've been drinking for a while, have you? Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's my third glass.
Excellent. So,
right. Moving on to the sumo segment then.
Yes, we've got lots to talk about today, haven't we, James?
Yeah. Should we do it outside?
Yeah, let's do it outside. So it's a really nice day. Well, depends on your definition of nice and what weather you like, of course. But
there is sweat coming out of every pore.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now we're on the patio. Oh, it's very bright. I appear to have lost my sunglasses. Hopefully,
they're here.
Oh,
thanks.
Left
them in bed.
Thanks. Oh, that's better. I can read the poems easily now because, of course, this is Poem Patio.
Oh, Poem Patio. I thought I recognised this place.
And today we don't have 1. No, we don't have 2. No. Actually, we do have 2. 2 poems, not 1.
2 poems.
2 poems.
For the price of 1.
Yeah. Well,
£0.
Yes, very short. And as this week is quite a silly and possibly, well, it's not silly, depending how you look at it, but I've completely forgotten the word, like a bawdy topic, let's say that. So what better style?
It's a raunchy topic.
Raunchy, yeah. What better style of poem to capture that than a limerick? And I'm a big fan of limericks.
Excellent.
So I have 2 limericks roughly around the subject we're talking about.
Okay.
Number 1. There was a small lady from Leeds who satisfied her customers' needs. She ate a large haddock in an old donkey's paddock, that extremely tiny lady from Leeds.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah, not much to say about it, is there?
What was she doing at that paddock?
Who knows? Who knows?
Okay.
For comparison, there was a young man.
Is this from the horse's perspective?
No.
Go on.
This is about a man this time, because we like to be equal around here. There was a young man from Worthing who had far too many offspring, so he sailed away for a week and a day, that promiscuous young man from Worthing.
Wow. You picked a town remarkably close to where I live.
I did. It fitted quite nicely, I thought.
Yeah, it's not even a very exciting place to be.
No, it isn't. It isn't.
No. Sorry to all the Worthingites, Worthlingters. I don't know.
Yeah. So,
well, I liked the first one more because I thought it rhymed more smoothly.
It did, and it's a more crazy, haddock, paddock, fun words. Yeah. Is there some sort of euphemism behind it? What's she doing in an old donkey's paddock?
Thank goodness for contraceptives. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
The guy in Worthing is just a guy hanging out in a kind of a drab town.
Yeah. Fathering children and then running away from his responsibilities. Not something I'm condoning.
No, but something that we do on a regular basis.
Yes.
We are the Henka Boys.
I can't think of any responsibilities I haven't dodged in my life.
Yeah, me neither.
No, can't think of any. So on to the main event. Interesting topic this week. I thought I thoroughly enjoyed researching it. We're going to be coming at it from slightly different angles. Hey. And I think we should say beforehand, we don't mean to offend anybody, but if we do, we don't really care. So don't make a fuss. So we're going to try and be as non-partisan as possible, but with our own opinions strongly thrown in there if necessary. James is going to be talking about forms of contraception, I believe.
I have some history as well.
And I'm going to be talking about some Christian implications and some sort of a bit of moral history of contraception. But disclaimer, there's a lot to talk about, and we're not going to cover much. Well, I'm certainly not.
Yeah.
So would you like to start?
Sure.
Yeah.
A long time ago in ancient Egypt.
Ooh.
And also Mesopotamia. But ancient Egypt sounded more mystical.
Ooh.
Mesopotamian women used stones as contraception. So they would just take small circular stones. It says small circular, but I assume they were spherical, really.
Yeah.
And they would bury them as deep as possible into their vagina in order to block sperm. Although they probably didn't know about sperm at the time. But, they got the general idea.
Well, I'd imagine that would have some degree of success, if possibly a little dangerous.
Yeah. We don't know, because there's no way of really knowing without having a load of women who are willing to jam stones up their vaginas, I suppose.
And you've got to pick a really smooth stone as well. Yeah,
no jagged edges. There's a papyrus writing called the Ebers Papyrus from 1550 BC, and the Cahoon Papyrus as well from 1850 BC. And they were amongst the earliest of the documented descriptions of birth control. And they recommended using honey, acacia leaves, and lint to be placed into the vagina to block sperm. So
literally, it's just like a dam.
Yeah, I mean, we're not even. I'll be honest, we're not even close to the amount of disgusting things that women from the past have put into their vaginas to stop sperm getting in there.
Okay.
Just a warning.
Hold on to your seats, ladies and gentlemen.
Just an early warning. The acacia leaves and honey sound quite pleasant compared to some of the ones coming up. Yeah. I mean, at least they're the sort of things you'd expect to find in a sort of a soothing cream or something, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah.
in the ingredients sections. So in the Cahoon papyrus I mentioned earlier, it describes using acacia gum, and recent research apparently confirms that acacia gum has spermaticidal qualities and is still used in contraceptive jellies today. So they were onto something with this. All right. Shall we move on to ancient Greece and Rome, Sean?
Oh, that sounds fantastic. I'm sure they had some really crazy stuff that they got up to, those ancient Romans.
Yeah, dial it back a bit. Right. Silphium was a species of giant fennel. It was native to Africa and was used as an oral contraceptive in ancient Greece. It would only grow in a small area in Africa. It was probably, as far as we know, completely ineffective. It was also used as a spice. But yeah, I don't know if it was effective as a spice. The article I'm reading doesn't mention that. However, it was probably completely ineffective as a contraceptive, but it was extremely wanted. It was sought after. It became so rare, it was worth more than its weight in silver. And it was eventually harvested into extinction.
A sad story.
The sad story of Silphium.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, Aristotle as well. You know, the famous
old Ari
philosopher, Ari. He recommended to just apply a little bit of cedar oil directly onto the womb before intercourse. Completely does nothing. Don't do that.
We're not recommending any of the techniques spoken about in this podcast, in case you were wondering.
Yeah. Well, we'll get. I mean, there are some things that might be recommended, but not putting cedar oil in your womb. Don't do that. Can you even get into your womb? Is there an easy access panel in there? Just squirt some oil in.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Anyway, in China, the master Tung Swan.
Yeah, know him well.
Tung Swan. He was a big proponent of coitus reservatus, which is a hilarious Latin name for edging. Just don't allow the man to ejaculate by keeping him on the edge of orgasm for as long as possible, basically. I mean, it was kind of effective, I suppose. It's not known if this was actually used as a method of birth control, though, or whether it was used to preserve the man's yang in his yin yang. I don't really understand that, to be honest, but apparently that's bad. I mean, yeah, I'm going to keep going. I've got loads of interesting history here.
And just in case you were wondering, my yin yang is in perfect balance.
I've seen your yin yang, and it's not good.
Oh, okay.
Should we move over to the Islamic world?
Oh, let's.
9th and 10th century Islamic world. So coitus interruptus, which is just pulling the penis out upon ejaculation and ejaculating anywhere else. Also, elephant poo,
Wow.
cabbages, and other types of poo. Just lots of different poos and cabbage mixed together into a combination and inserted into the vagina. Basically, I mean, firstly, okay, I'm interested in this a little bit, Sean, because there's some yeast in the vagina, right?
Yeah.
We're putting cabbage in there. Can we make sauerkraut?
It's possible.
Can this be done? Can we get like human fermented sauerkraut? I'm interested in that.
Yes, if you're a scientist and you need a project, you're welcome. You're welcome.
You don't have to be a scientist. You could just be a strange person.
Yep.
Yep. So yeah, that was kind of interesting. However, the Prophet Muhammad did not approve of any methods that prevented pregnancy. So you know, it depends. Like, do you want to believe in Muhammad, or do you want to stick elephant dung into your vagina?
Yeah, I feel like some of these ancient remedies, honey, herbal related stuff, you can see where there might have been some evidence, but I feel like the obsession with poo is probably more of a mystical thing rather than like,
from the earth and the earth gives back to you kind of
crocodiles
thing,
are sacred, this will help.
Yeah. Well, elephants sacred in Islam? I don't know.
I don't think so.
So in South Asia, the Indians were up to some stuff.
Of course,
they made potions, like actual legit potions made of palm leaves and red chalk. But they also like to stick a bit of honey, ghee, and salt into the vagina.
Okay.
So that's what they were getting up to.
Sounds pretty tasty.
Yes, it does. Again with the fermentation though of ghee. I don't know.
I think you need to clear your mind of this fermentation nonsense.
Well, okay. I'll give it a go. So that takes us pretty much up to sort of the Victorian era.
Yeah,
and
nothing happened in between.
No. And I guess if you want to take over with some interesting Christianity facts.
Well, we're still in the past. Yes. Okay, I will. I will do that. Right. So you mentioned already coitus interruptus, and
one of my favourite forms of contraception,
and which is Genesis 38:7-10. Is one of the main bases,
sure.
One of the main bases that Christian, especially Catholic teaching to do with contraception and the purpose of marriage is based on these lines.
Right.
And it's considered by some to be the sole foundation of one of the most important theological teachings in the modern world. But
right.
Theologists still argue whether God killed Onan, who committed
the barbarian.
Onan the Onan the barbarian. Whether they killed him because he spilled his seed on the ground, or because he refused
to have. Do you have
the
verse on you? Can you read the verse to me, and I'll tell you how I interpret it? I'll be a theologian, and you can read me the line, and I'll tell you exactly what's going on.
Okay.
Using my incredible interpretational skills.
This is what we need. You see, someone with a fresh mind.
Yeah. I've been completely outside of theology my whole life. I'm going to come in. I'm going to completely revolutionize Christianity.
I'm not sure I'd go that far, but
No.
no, no.
Okay. Well, no. This is a very poor attempt at stalling.
It is. I'm
Yeah.
going to keep talking about something else in the meantime.
Okay. Right.
Because it can be said that
well, most things can be said.
Most things can be said that Onan was killed because of an ancient law where the backstory is he'd married his brother's widow, and the law was you had to marry your brother's widow and have a child with her to continue your brother's line if he was the older brother than you. So that's the backstory.
Right. So the dispute is whether he was killed over ejaculating on the ground, or whether he was killed because of his unwillingness to impregnate his brother's widow.
Exactly. Yes. So
there were more rational times back then.
Then Judah said to Onan, "Sleep with your brother's wife and fulfill your duty to her as a brother-in-law to raise up offspring for your brother." But Onan knew that the child would not be his. So whenever he slept with his brother's wife, he spilled his seed on the ground to keep from providing offspring for his brother. What he did was wicked in the Lord's sight, so the Lord put him to death also.
Right.
So the wicked act has been disputed over time.
I see. I think maybe like a formal inquiry could have been made before the execution.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe bring him to court or something.
Yeah.
I just think that the killing him thing was pretty. It's an aggressive move, right?
It is. But
yeah.
We're not here to judge, are we?
No. That's why I want to bring him in front of a judge to answer for his crime.
And so this and another line in the Bible, very famous from the start, somewhere near the start, be fruitful and multiply, God tells Adam and Eve. And so these two put together, early theologians put together, and they're like, okay, seed has to be used only for creating children, and nothing else. Not wasted.
What, you think that Onan may have just pulled out some birdseed from his pocket and thrown it on the ground every time he had sex? Maybe that was his quirk. Maybe that was his thing.
It's extremely ambiguous. But,
what are you doing, Onan? I need to do the seed thing, or I can't finish.
And
I've got to throw some seed on the ground.
Yes. And early theologian Clement of Alexandria expresses the early Christian view of the abhorrence of spilling seed in these lines. He wrote, "Because of its divine institution for the propagation of man, the seed is not to be vainly ejaculated, nor is it to be damaged, nor is it to be wasted. To have coitus other than to procreate children is to do injury to nature."
Interesting. But this was like before Christianity and Islam as well. This was quite an alien view, right? I mean, people were sticking all sorts out there to stop themselves from getting pregnant. But with Christianity and Islam came a kind of aversion to doing that.
Yeah, exactly. That's really interesting. I hadn't thought of that. Because they had religions, these Mesopotamians and Egyptians had religions, but there doesn't seem to be
anything, that goes against.
We don't know too much about their religions because there isn't a religious text in existence, I guess.
Yeah, it was probably more sort of myth-based, right? Handed down like orally, I guess.
So I'm behaving. This teaching has continued through the centuries with Christian teaching. and is very little altered until the 20th century. And on the very last day of 1930, Pope Pius XI released a papal encyclical, which is like
the name of his magazine.
Yes, it's like a letter that goes out to every church in the world from the Pope,
Right.
saying you should get this out to the people, sort of thing. And it was in response to the Lambeth Conference in Lambeth in London, which said something he didn't like, and that on the subject of contraception, and so he thought he'd best reiterate the word of God.
Okay.
Get it out there, and make sure people.
So he said that contraception was okay, or
No, exactly
not
the opposite. Okay. No, the casti connubii, which means of chaste wedlock in Latin, the name of this thing, stressed the sanctity of marriage and prohibited Catholics from using any form of artificial birth control.
Yeah.
It also stressed the authority of the church's doctrine on moral matters, and asked that civil governments followed the lead of the church in this area. And this is the first time in history. Yeah, the Catholic Church has actually gone out, the Pope, and said, this is the rules. And it was quite recent. I think it was sort of implied before that, and everyone sort of knew it, but there wasn't like a big papal.
But the Pope was sick of it, I guess. He was seeing everyone using contraceptives, and he was like, no, I'm going to send a letter out.
However, some really strict Catholics before this had believed that the only reason for sexual intercourse was to attempt to create children. And the slight change in some Catholic thinking after this is he did say it's fine if you're married to have sex for non-procreative purposes.
Oh, right.
And so it sort of stopped being a sin.
Okay, but only if you're married.
Oh, of course, yeah. And the Pope acknowledges the unitive aspect of intercourse between man and wife as important.
That's nice of him.
And he says that artificial contraception is intrinsically evil. And then it gets even more controversial for some Catholics. He said, methods of natural family planning may be used, as they do not usurp the natural way of conception. This is basically only having sex in the woman's cycle when she's least likely to get pregnant. But up till this point, most strict Catholic teachings said that was wrong as well.
Oh, so what was the teachings? You were just supposed to have sex once every 3 hours or something?
No, just whenever you wanted to, but...
Oh, right.
To have... Well, I don't think so. You weren't supposed to have intercourse if your wife was pregnant, because there was no need for it.
Oh, right. I see. So you would... I suppose you'd sit down and be like, you'd plan out your next child sort of thing.
Yeah. And I should say at this point, why there has been such a need for contraception throughout history? Because if a woman marries at 20 years old and continues to at least her menopause, without artificially limiting fertility, she can expect to carry and conceive and carry at least 10 children. Obviously, it depends on the person, the age of the menopause. Some people become fertile more quickly after giving birth. So 10 is
quite common at the time, right?
Yeah, like 10 is the minimum you can expect.
I mean, my grandmother was the youngest of her, I was going to say litter.
A brood, yes.
A brood. 13. She's the 13th child and final one. That's quite a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, but that is about how many you get if you're always pregnant. Yeah, so this is why it's been so important over the centuries, because people have always thought this is a problem. If you're poor,
This is getting out of hand.
Well, obviously a main issue is the majority of a population throughout history has always been poor, and having more and more children is a strain on resources. But then this is offset by lots of them not living very long, so they get replaced.
Yes.
But during medieval times, there was very strict laws around when and why you could have sex. Obviously, it's very difficult to know how much these were ignored. I'd imagine they were quite a bit, unless you were extremely devout. But for example, and it obviously changed between country and between century. The medieval period was very long, but
because I don't think. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sean. But CCTV hadn't been invented in the medieval period, right?
No, they had artists who sat in little boxes up in the sky, and they'd
that's right.
draw everything that happened. But they were quite slow. They sometimes went to sleep.
And obviously, sometimes tragically fell off of the clouds and died.
Yes, it was tricky situation.
Often the clouds as well would drift because they blow around in the wind, don't they?
And of course, they didn't have telescopes, so as soon as they drifted too far away,
rain.
Made the paper soggy.
Yeah, it's cold up there as well. Not a lot of oxygen either.
Anyway, so on Fridays, which was the day that Christ died. No, not allowed Fridays.
No sex day.
No.
Okay.
It also not allowed Thursdays, because that's the day Christ was rested, and you're not allowed to have sex on Saturdays either, because that's in honor of the Virgin Mary, and you're not allowed to have
weekend gone.
And you're not allowed to have sex on Sundays in memory of the resurrection, and you're not allowed to have sex on Mondays in memory of the departed.
So Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yes,
those were sex days.
They were, yes, but they were also forbidden during Lent.
Right.
And sex was also not allowed in the festivals of Pentecost or Christmas or before communion.
Right.
And there were also laws saying how you were allowed to have sex. You were only allowed to have sex missionary, basically, because the others they thought were just for fun, and that wasn't allowed. So
is the missionary position named after some kind of religious thing? Well, did missionaries go over to Africa or something, and they're only having sex in that position?
Where did that come from? That is an interesting question. I'm having
quite a religious name, doesn't it? I've always wondered about that.
Yeah, it's apparent. Yeah, you're right. It's apparently from Christian missionaries who supposedly encouraged this position to be used by new converts in the colonial.
And that was why the reason you were just saying, because you're only allowed to have sex in missionary.
Yes.
Because I was wondering, all the other positions make sense, don't they? Like doggy style.
Yeah.
It's like it makes sense.
The female supine position is how it is written in medieval texts.
Okay.
And it was also recommended to wear heavy garments and have a minimum of bodily contact during intercourse.
Oh, obviously. I mean, we do that to this day.
So they really weren't much
clocks. Heaviest shoes you can get, aren't they?
Yeah,
clocks.
Yeah. So they
as well.
They are. They were heavily against the whole idea of sex, basically, and they really only wanted it to be used until someone was pregnant, and then that'd be it for a year.
Yeah.
So this got me thinking. why, like, surely this can't have been followed. And I know that there was a big trade in prostitution.
Yeah.
Prostitution was very prevalent during the Middle Ages. So I thought, well, why was it being allowed if they were that serious about it? But
money. I suppose even the top guys that were enforcing this were probably paying for prostitutes at the time, I'd imagine.
Yes, because all these aren't civil laws. These are like religious laws. They're sins, but you weren't punished.
Was there a difference at the time?
There was. You weren't
There was.
punished for it. You were, but not. It's not like you were whipped or executed or something.
It was more like you're going to go to hell.
Yes.
Sort of vague afterlife punishment.
Depending on the country and the time period, there were heavy fines, or you'd have to wear something embarrassing and march down the street in it and stuff like that. But it's commonly thought that
first catwalk started.
Yeah, even though sexual activity outside of marriage is considered sinful, prostitution was tolerated because it prevented the greater evils of rape, sodomy, and masturbation.
Right, so that's what they were really against.
So they believed those three were much worse than sex for pleasure. So,
right. But again, I'm thinking there must have been a few prostitutes that were like, 60 quid and you can come and sodomize me. That had to have been
that's not the original definition of sodomy. Sodomy in the Bible is sex with animals.
Sex with animals, okay.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Sheep and
other animals.
Such.
Chipmunks.
Yes.
Ostriches. Did I want to get an ostrich?
So that was it, and they accepted prostitution as inevitable, and they condemned those. They condemned those profiting from it and encouraged repentance. See, they're very big on this repentance. They still are, the Catholic Church, and
they love it.
So. They recognised it was going to be impossible to remove and began to tolerate it as the lesser of many evils. However, if you were a prostitute, you were excluded from the church as long as you continued with the lifestyle until you repented. And of course, Mary Magdalene in the Bible, prostitute, was one of the most popular saints in this era, the prostitute saint Mary Magdalene. So they used her history of being the reformed prostitute to encourage prostitutes to repent and mend their ways.
Right, I see. Well, presumably prostitution must have been quite a dangerous profession at the time, right?
Well, it's strange you say that because that's exactly what I'm getting onto next.
Oh, okay.
Do you know what happened in 1494?
Time went on like normal.
Yes, and the French invaded Italy.
Oh, they didn't.
They did. They'd been squabbling for decades, but they did it, and lots of the French troops had a strange disease, sometimes known as the French disease. And this is syphilis. Ooh. And we don't know where it came from.
Salacious French.
Yeah, there are suggestions that it was brought back by Columbus from the New World the year before.
Right.
But scientists today still aren't sure where this disease comes from. But anyway, it was spread like wildfire because of prostitution. The French soldiers
Yeah.
sleeping with all the prostitutes, and just everybody started getting it. And this is when prostitution started to become less tolerated. Obviously, it still happened everywhere on a national level, but on smaller levels, towns started kicking out prostitutes, and it really went downhill for the prostitute after this, for centuries, in fact, because the sexually transmitted diseases weren't as rife as they were in the 17th, 18th, 19th centuries in this period. So, like, it wasn't actually that dangerous, they don't believe, in earlier medieval times, pre-syphilis.
All right.
But
suddenly we started developing lots of different STIs.
And syphilis is by far the worst. And there's no cure in this period at all, really. There were some sort of wacky cures, but they were pretty bad, involving putting mercury and stuff down your penis.
Right.
And syphilis is an awful, awful disease.
Yeah.
So that's why there was a big change in sort of Christian teaching. They're suddenly like, okay, yeah, we're not having anything to do with prostitutes. We don't care if they repent or not. It's just like, just don't do it. You know, they because everyone was terrified of this. Mostly the governments and clergy, because it was soldiers that were worst affected.
Yeah, that's not good if you're trying to invade Italy.
No, and then they're suddenly all dying, and their noses are falling off and stuff. Which that was a big side effect.
Oh my God!
And
everyone's shoving mercury into their penises.
Yes, and everything else. To be honest, I think they just gave everything a go. But so
why not? I guess if your death is imminent.
Yeah, well, I don't want to talk about syphilis too much. It's not a terribly fun subject. So this medieval thinking transferred basically right up to Victorian times.
Yeah.
It dipped a bit in the 16 and 1700s when morals became a bit looser, but then the prudish Victorians brought it all back again. Suddenly, you're not even allowed to talk about sex or contraception. It's a really taboo subject, and if you do talk about it, you have to be a doctor. It's like just not something people talk about. I was quite surprised about how strong still this idea was about coitus interruptus. The founder of Methodism in the late 1700s, John Wesley, wrote that any waste of the semen in an unproductive sexual act, whether that should be in the form of masturbation or coitus interruptus, as in the case of Onan, destroyed the souls of the individuals who practiced it.
Wow.
And Methodism was one of the I don't want to say...
It was a calm one, wasn't it?
Yeah. I was going to say
it wasn't a very crusader-y kind of...
No, it's one of the nicer religions. Religious sects. They were inclusive and were separate from the Church of England because they didn't like how structuralized religion had become. But I was surprised they were still so adamant on this point.
Yeah. So it must have been a very embedded thing in culture as well.
It was. So, you can... Now I've brought you back to Victorian times. Please continue with
Yes.
The history of things in that area.
Of things. In 1877, Sean.
Yes.
The Malthusian League was established. And they were really the first sort of organisation that were really pushing family planning as sort of an alternative to all these weird sort of contraceptive ideas that people are coming up with. And they came up with, all this sort of structured routine of how you could avoid getting pregnant by, as you were saying earlier, by basically only having sex during the downtime and the ovulation period, if you like. So that was really sort of quite popular there, and that was tied into the feminist movement as well, which was, I believe, starting around that era. We'll probably be able to give you an exact date on that, will you?
Exact date for what? There were lots of different dates where different things started, but the campaign for women's suffrage, votes for women, was well and truly on the way by the late 1870s. Yes.
Yeah. So this was sort of part of like empowering the woman to have control of her own body, basically, saying like, oh, you can follow this guideline and you can decide whether or not you want to get pregnant.
Yeah.
So there was a page from a book called Family Limitation in 1917 as well, which described a cervical cap. And this was sort of the start of more modern contraceptive methods, I suppose. And the contraceptive cap or contraceptive diaphragm,
yes, yeah.
Not diagram. Basically, just like a little sort of cup that you would fill with a spermicidal gel, and that could do a pretty good job at stopping any semen from getting in. Nowadays, the diaphragm is between a minimum of 92% effective, which it's pretty good, but it's fairly low compared to a lot of the other contraceptive methods that we have available today.
It is, yeah.
And it's a lot more high maintenance as well. You have to actually fill it with spermicide. And you have to remember that if you haven't had sex for the first 3 hours it's been in there, you have to take it out and put more spermicide on it and then put it back in.
Right.
So it's a bit annoying to use.
Yeah.
And it's by no means the most effective.
It's not quite as convenient as a condom, is it?
No, it isn't. It also needs to be left in for 6 hours after sex, and can't be used twice. So basically, there's like a 6-hour sex cool down if you're using it. I guess I'll go into some of these more modern contraceptive methods, shall I, and talk about some of them.
Yeah.
The condom is probably the most popular method, I guess, or I don't know, maybe the pill is. I'm not sure.
We don't know.
But the condom is 98% effective when used correctly. And these are often, you can get these for free from most places. At least you can in the UK. I'm assuming it's the same in most places. Originally, these were, I believe, made using animal intestines, later replaced with rubber, and then replaced with a more advanced rubber called latex.
Yeah, we should say that the condom has been around for about 400 years.
It has, I think. Yeah, in some form or another. Yeah.
But they weren't mass-produced.
Like very originally, it was just a layer of like linen gauze, sort of placed like fine linen gauze, which was placed over the penis. This was apparently somewhat effective, but not immensely effective.
And I believe they were originally used mostly to prevent STIs rather than for contraception.
Really?
Yeah,
I see.
the condom was sort of a result of the syphilis epidemic, I believe.
Yeah. So some downsides of the condom, though. Certain products that you might be using for lubricant can damage condoms. So it's only recommended that you use water-based lubricants, never oil-based. And it's, of course, possible for a condom to come off or break during sex. And if that happens, then you'll have to get yourself checked out. Another con that's listed here is that it could be interruptive to the process, but not massively, right?
Only takes one strong little sperm to get in there.
Yeah, if you have one sperm that's visible to the naked eye, it's so strong.
Yeah,
it just bursts through. There's not much you can do about it. The baby will be very strong.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it's also the NHS recommends not putting it on with your teeth or mouth, or opening the packet with your teeth, or if you have any jewellery on your hands, as this is will be an incorrect use of the condom and will therefore be less effective. There's also female condoms, which are only 95% effective, which is pretty bad, right?
It is, yeah.
Basically, they look almost identical to male condoms, but it sort of extends out, and you put there's two rings, right? And one ring goes in, and one ring goes less in. That's basically the idea of it. The main problem with it is that it was apparently somewhat common for sperm to get in around the sides of the rings, and also if you do any foreplay, Sean, little bits of pre-cum can slither in before you even put it in.
Okay. Yeah.
Which is not the best. So yeah, it's apparently it's recommended to not touch the area around the vagina with a penis before a female condom is put in. Also, pushing it too far in is apparently bad. I don't know why. Don't do that though. But you can get female condoms and condoms for free from most places, which is like a big benefit of them, right?
Yeah.
So that's good stuff. Right, the pill, Sean. What type of pill do you want to know about first? We've got the progestogen only pill.
I know very little about any of them.
The progestogen only pill is 99% effective, more than 99% effective. However, in real life, if it's not used correctly, which it isn't really ever, it's only 92% effective.
That's quite low, actually.
Yes. And the reason for that is that you have to take the pill at the same time every day. And if you take it 3 hours late, you reduce the effectiveness by quite a large margin. You can also get a desogestrel pill, which you can take up to 12 hours late, apparently, which is good. But yeah, it's extremely effective. It doesn't interrupt the flow of sex at all.
Is this the morning after pill? Is that another thing entirely?
No, that's a completely different thing.
Okay.
Yeah, no, these are all preventative measures. Because the morning after pill is a not
post preventative measure.
It's a post-dentative method. Yeah, exactly. However, the most common pill that most women take if they're on the pill is the combined pill, usually called the pill. This contains hormones. It contains the hormones estrogen and progesterone, which are produced in the ovaries, and it basically just triggers your ovaries to stop producing eggs. So this is over 99% effective as well when taken correctly. However, it does need to be taken at the same time every day, again, or it will be reduced in effectiveness.
Right.
Yeah. So, and these are taken for 21 once every day for 21 days, and then a 7-day period of not taking them, during which time a period-like blood substance will come out. So yeah, so they're like the most effective ways of stopping pregnancy. Basically, they don't do anything for STIs, obviously, but the recommended thing is to use the pill along with a condom. That's apparently the most effective way of stopping everything. But there's some ways. Some women really don't like having to take a pill at the same time every day, or they struggle to do that. And there's a few other things you can have if you don't want to do that.
Side effects as well, aren't there?
Yeah. So the pill. So blood clots are the main risk. However, it's a small chance to get a blood clot. And it's also, you're not advised to take the pill if you are over 35, or if you're a smoker, or have recently quit smoking, or if you're very overweight, or have migraines, or have high blood pressure, or have had a blood clot or stroke, or you have a close relative who has had a blood clot, or you are immobile for long periods of time.
There's about 5% of the population left after this, isn't there?
Just don't be over 35 in a wheelchair or be related to anyone that's had blood problems. Fine.
Yeah, absolutely fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
I think
other methods quickly. Oh, go
on. Something that I was quite surprised. I sort of knew, but was reading earlier, is that the prevalence of any sort of medical contraception, and that's including condoms, is still quite rare in a lot of parts of the world.
Yes.
Where coitus interruptus is still
practiced,
one of the main methods, and this, of course, doesn't help STIs in any way.
No, it doesn't.
And
it's a real problem.
I've just got, I don't know how accurate it is, but I've just got the figure up. Apparently only about 10% of the world's sexually active population regularly uses a condom.
10%? That was very low, actually.
But I believe in the Western world, it's looking at this somewhere in the 65 to 70%.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy, isn't it?
So there still needs to be more information out there and people in developing countries and better access to these things.
Well, yeah, definitely. So I'll just run down just a couple of the other methods that are. I'll just go over them really.
Is there any sort of male contraceptive pill? And I feel like it's been something I've been working on for a while, but can't quite get it to work.
It's rough, isn't it? Because what would you do? You'd make the testicles stop producing sperm or something. But,
which they can do, but I believe it has lots of other side effects. And it's very difficult to stop them producing sperm completely.
Yeah.
You can do 95% of it, but then...
But it's no good.
Yeah.
Even one of those little buggers can do a lot of work.
Yeah.
You know?
And even vasectomies, which I'm sure you might be about to mention, aren't
I've got
100%.
some vasectomy news, yeah.
Oh, news.
Well, not
I get
news,
excited when I read about vasectomy news.
So other interesting things are implants. So you can get a little plastic rod implanted into your upper arm. Lasts for 3 days, and it just injects progesterone into your bloodstream. Lasts for 3 years. Sorry, did I say?
I was going to say 3 days doesn't sound that useful.
3 years.
Okay. Yeah.
That's 99% effective. There's injections you can get. You have to take them every 13 weeks. They're 99% effective or more than that. There's a patch, like a Nicorette patch, but for pregnancy. More than 99% effective, again.
Okay.
Yeah. Apparently you can still swim around and stuff, and it's fine. There's IUDs, intrauterine devices, which are just inserted. They're like a T-shaped. Have you seen them before? They're sort of like anchors.
Yeah, I've seen them.
Made of plastic and copper, placed into your womb, stops you from getting pregnant, and they last for between 5 and 10 years, apparently. And
Wow.
more than 99% effective again, but you do have to check they're still in after every period, apparently. And then there's natural family planning or fertility awareness. How effective do you think family planning is?
I reckon 70 to 80%.
Nope, it's up to 99% effective. Apparently, if you follow.
Oh, okay. Okay.
However, it is much less effective if the instructions aren't carefully followed. But there's lots of different ways you can find this out. You can track your menstrual cycle and ovulation using like a diary system. There's a temperature pack. You can take your temperature and you can tell. Cervical secretions. There's all kinds of crazy stuff you can do. But that's like a very natural way of doing it. Obviously, it doesn't do anything against STIs, but if you're doing family planning, you're probably with someone that you trust, I'd hope.
Yeah.
in some way. The vaginal ring as well. I've not heard of this one, actually. The vaginal ring, often called Nuva ring, it's just a small ring that is placed inside the vagina, more than 99% effective. Works for about a month. So that's good. And then there's sterilization. So we have the vasectomy, which is more than 99% effective. And this is just a surgical procedure when you cut the tubes that carry sperm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Apparently it takes place under local anesthetic and it only takes 15 minutes.
Something every man looks forward to in life.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't affect your sex drive at all, apparently. But it's not effective at all for 8 to 12 weeks after the operation because the sperm can live for flipping ages, sure. And apparently the sperm can live inside of your tubes for up to 12 weeks. Just chilling out.
Wow. Okay.
Which is kind of crazy.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. It can be reversed, but it's very, very difficult to do. So probably don't do that. And yeah, it basically just stops sperm from entering the semen. But the semen will still come out by itself, which is quite lonely. But yeah, so it's pretty effective, but it's not 100% effective. Sometimes the tubes can heal in weird ways. It means they kind of connect again. don't want that to happen. There's female sterilization as well. So this is where they just block the fallopian tubes to prevent any eggs from getting there.
Is that reversible?
Yes, but again, very difficult.
Okay.
Yeah, and apparently there is a fair chance it won't work as well. The blocked tubes apparently are very good at fixing themselves, either immediately or within a few years. So it may be that you'll have to do this operation a few times. Yeah, you can also, apparently they do something called a salpingectomy, where if they keep healing and fixing themselves, you can just go in and take the tubes out.
Right.
That's a bit more of an involved process.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's another method. What other methods are there? I think that's basically most of the methods that I'm reading this from the NHS's recommended contraception guide.
Okay.
And that's basically all of the methods. So yeah, apparently the most effective thing you can do is for the woman to be on the pill, the man uses a condom, and you both use natural family planning together. Now that's sort of the most effective, although it might be kind of overkill.
Yeah.
Thoughts, Sean? What's your favourite contraceptive?
My favourite, personally.
Yeah.
I think the condom is gets a bad name.
It's a classic, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's quite a funny moment.
Yeah.
At least they're always laughing when I do it.
Yeah. Okay, right.
Yeah.
I do have another little story to finish us off with, unless you've got anything else. Okay, you mentioned the Malthusian League earlier.
Yeah.
And
briefly,
this is related to
the Malthusian League.
It sort of, yes. I'm going to talk about two people called Annie Besant and Charles Bradlaugh. And
okay, firstly, good names.
I'm
on board.
Yeah. Okay, right. Yeah. And this was it was founded during their trial. They were famously on trial. And why were they on trial? Well, back in 1832, an American physician called Charles Knowlton, that's spelled Knowlton, so he knows things, Charles Knowlton, wrote a book called The Fruits of Philosophy, or The Private Companion of Young Married People.
Okay.
And
so sort of like a couples counselling sort of thing.
Yeah, it's about contraception. That's the first proper book published about it, really. But it's not just about that. It's about having children as well. There's methods of treating infertility and impotence, but also stuff about birth control that he had developed, which is to wash out the vagina with a sponge soaked in certain chemical solutions, which was reasonably effective and one of the main methods women used during the 19th century. But he went to prison for 3 months for publishing it, doing hard labour, because you're not allowed to publish stuff like that in those days.
Oh,
it was obscene.
I see.
And this book remains in relative obscurity, apart from people who are really interested and are digging. You couldn't just walk into a bookshop and get it, or or bite from an ice cream van.
Sure.
But in 1876, it was propelled into the public eye when Annie Besant and Charles Bradlaugh,
Oh my!
who had founded the National Secular Society. They were both atheists.
That's pretty edgy at the time.
It was, yeah. And Annie Besant herself was devoutly religious. She married a vicar.
Okay.
But she had a couple of kids. One of her kids got very ill and almost died. And it made her question her belief in God. And after a few years of struggling and reading lots of evidence and talking to other people, she decided that she was no longer religious, refused to go to church, which embarrassed her husband considerably. And so she left him. But he got custody of the children.
This is salacious.
As it was in those days, she had no rights over the children because she was a woman.
Yeah.
She got to see them once a month or something like that. It wasn't very good. But anyway, so they'd founded the National Secular
my relationship with my father.
Society, and they decided to try and publish this book in England and get it more widespread, because she was extremely concerned with the slums in London, how many children were being born and stuff like that. So they got a Bristol bookseller to publish it, a man called Henry Cook, and he was arrested and sentenced to 2 years hard labour. So they were really serious about this sort of stuff. And so then they got another printer, a friend of theirs called Charles Watts. And
they learned.
He started printing it too. And he was arrested. And when confronted with the prospect of a prison sentence, he repented and agreed to destroy all the printer's plates and all of his current stock. Okay. And Annie and Charles were quite disappointed about this because they thought he was a close friend who was on their side. They kind of both had nothing to lose. Well, he was a politician, actually. He was an MP. I should mention that. But this didn't seem to affect his MP-ness at this point. They really wanted to do something about this. They knew it was really dangerous and they thought they'd probably get in trouble for it, but they did it anyway. So they were both quite wealthy. They thought they could probably talk/buy their way out of it. But they wanted to get it in the papers. They wanted to get arrested. They were being as provocative as possible. So they start their own publishing house, and they call it the Free Thought Publishing Company, which is a nice name.
Okay, yeah.
And they start publishing it in pamphlets, really cheap, at only 6p each, so that ordinary working people could get it. The issue with this book is it was quite famous, and a lot of wealthy, educated people were aware of it and had read it, but it was believed it was dangerous to get it into the working classes because it contained lots of atheist ideas and stuff like that. And so
don't want to rile the proles up.
So yeah, the Obscene Publications Act of 1857 made it illegal to publish material.
It wasn't illegal up to this point.
It was, but that was the latest act where they'd updated it and made it even stricter.
Right, okay.
And so that's what they were charged under. They were both arrested from their shop when it was full of customers. There were massive queues. People were really excited about this book being published. Obviously, people wanted to know more about this, and the police came in and arrested them. It was all very peaceful. They got arrested and they were bailed out, but they had to go to court lots of times, and they represented themselves, which especially for a woman was almost unheard of in this period, representing yourself in court. And cut along,
so not the smartest move usually.
It usually isn't, no, but that was a rare situation where there would probably be, the lawyers would probably be very inexperienced in defending people in their position because it just didn't happen very often.
I see.
And they also wanted to get their names in the paper and make themselves famous, which they did.
Yeah. I mean, this whole thing was basically like a publicity stunt, right, to get their book. Their book, which was, I guess, more of a manifesto, really, into the public.
The version they printed as well, they edited slightly and made it more up to date because this was 45 years after the original one. Some new stuff had been learned, so they were technically authors as well at this point, which made it a bit more serious than just publishing it.
Yeah.
But in the end, to cut a long story short, I can't remember exactly. The trial went on for ages. Bradlaugh was a politician. He spoke very well and eventually got the charge thrown out due to a technicality in what they were being charged for. I don't know what this is and I couldn't find it easily, but something in the wording of the indictment that you're not allowed to publish material for immoral purposes. He argued the meaning of immoral basically and said, when this isn't immoral, this is education. That's wildly paraphrasing, but that's roughly the gist of how the trial went. And the sympathetic judge threw out the case and gave them like £100 fine. This made them extremely, extremely well known, and people that had watched them during the trial like approached them and set up the Malthusian League, which its aim was to promote, as you said, public education in matters of contraception. And sales of contraception absolutely surged during the trial and immediately afterwards. So, as a big turning point in like the moral history of contraception, especially in the UK, because they both got away with it. And then they just went and published it again. They weren't to be stopped, and eventually laws changed, and there was more freedom of speech when it came to these things. But it was they
were probably a driving force behind that.
Yeah, massively so, and a couple of the first famous atheists in the country. So they're almost unheard of unless you're in the area of Victorian studies.
Which you are.
Yes, but they were very famous at the time, and unfortunately she didn't ever get custody of her children, but she did have a relationship with them when they grew up, and they sort of picked her over their father, I believe, and helped her with her work. So it wasn't a terrible end for her, but if you read her autobiography, it is incredibly harrowing, the hate and stuff she went through when she decided to become an atheist and leave her vicar husband, and all that sort of stuff. So she's a huge figure in both contraception and women's rights movement, but hardly known about.
Well, I think hopefully, there's a bit more awareness of their spread today. Yeah, which is good. Yeah, there's a lot of unknown names in these sort of movements. I think, like right at the start, you only typically hear about the ones later down the line when the movement sort of finally ends.
Yeah, when they achieve what they want, the
final
people
person that does the final push, you hear about.
Yeah,
you don't hear about the people laying the foundations.
The people who struggled the hardest.
Yeah,
at the start.
Yeah.
So I think that
So remember that when sumo podcasts take over the world, we were the ones that laid the first brick.
Oh yes, a century time when you literally can't move through the internet because there's just pop-ups all over your screen. It's like, oh, another sumo podcast has started. You know, oh, the Prime Minister has a sumo podcast. The Queen has a sumo podcast.
Just remember, the Henka Boys were here in the 21st century, already doing a sumo podcast.
It's
And
unbelievable. I can't believe it myself.
In 3D at this time as well.
Yeah, and not even happening.
Not
Sumo even exists yet? I'm not sure.
It's been cancelled. I'll be honest, we've run out of ideas. We're running out fast. Please send us some ideas. We thought we'd be covering sumo by this point in time.
We did, yes. This sumo podcast has had to adapt to difficult times, as everyone has had to adapt to difficult times. We like to think we're doing a reasonable job of it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're doing more than a reasonable job, I'd say. Yeah, I forgot the word, but I agree with you. So I think that roughly ends up our topic of today. I hope you found it interesting, enlightening, sexy, but all our podcasts are sexy, James. Come on. Well, yeah, I know.
So yeah, wrapping up that segment, what could you entertain me with today, fact-wise, James? How interesting are you going to make it?
I've got a short fact for you today.
Okay.
Very short. About 3'8".
Wow, that's like Hobbit-sized.
No, it's dwarf size. Kenny Baker is about 3'8".
Ah,
he played R2D2 in the. I'm gonna annoy some people here, but in the overrated Star Wars films.
I totally agree.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
That's good. That's good.
It's no Lord of the Rings, is it?
It isn't. No, and I'd rate it maybe like top 200 trilogies. I've not actually watched 200 trilogies. And Anthony Daniels, heard of him?
C-3PO, yes.
Yes, he plays C-3PO. They've played in all of the films apparently, like even the new ones that were quite bad. Interesting fact: hated each other. Did you know that? Have you heard about this?
I don't think I have actually, no.
C-3PO actor and R2D2 actor hated each other.
Why?
Apparently, Kenny Baker said that what's his name? Anthony Daniels was the rudest man he has ever met.
Right. I've never met him, so I can't comment.
Yeah. That's literally the entire fact. I have no more information.
Excellent.
I'm not joking. That was it.
Well, I enjoyed it. And I'm sure if the audience enjoy it as much as we did, they're going to go and dig deeper, see what they can find.
Into their pockets.
Yes.
And don't forget, everyone, that next week will be week 10 and will therefore be a interesting fact relating to our favourite animal.
Llamas.
The armadillo.
The armadillo. It's close.
The armadillo.
Yes. Yeah, the armadillo.
Right, well, I think we should get out of here now.
Excellent. So, yeah, catch us on Facebook, catch us on Twitter, catch us in a net. You can also find us on YouTube. Please contact us through any of these aforementioned social things, and we'll do our best to also acknowledge you. Also on Tinder, yes. The Henka Boys.
And LinkedIn.
And LinkedIn, yes.
And Grindr.
Also, thing? I think so, yeah. Also on Freelancer.
And TikTok. We're not on TikTok.
No, don't be silly. Goodbye.
Goodbye.